Welcome, viewers of your award-winning Let's Talk America radio with host Shana Thornton. Of course, I am Shana, on-air host and executive producer. And welcome to our edition of Real Talk. Of course, it is our video series where we highlight the trending topics you want to know more about with the best advocates and experts out there. And tonight's edition of Real Talk certainly is no exception. I'm super excited to have someone. This is her first appearance, her world debut here on Let's Talk America Radio, but it shall not be her last. And I'm talking about the one and only registered dietitian based out of Los Angeles, California, Carolina Schneider. Carolina, welcome to the program.
Hi, Shana. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Super excited to have you on. We're going to talk about so many things tonight. We're going to talk about a plant-based diet. We're going to talk about being a vegetarian, what it really means to be a healthy vegetarian in 2022, because I suspect that in previous years, I did wrong. And I'm sure there are millions of Americans and individuals outside of the US that perhaps are not doing it in the ideal way to maximize the best health results with vegetarianism. But first, we have a tradition here on Let's Talk America Radio, Carolina, and it's where we ask our exceptional guests, such as yourself, what really drove you to your area of expertise? I know you've had the schooling, the certifications, you've had many clients and patients that you're treated, but what got you here? Anything you could have specialized in as a dietitian? Why focus on being vegetarian and other options to get people to be their best ever?
Oh, I love this question. So I am extremely passionate about helping people feel better, right? So we know our lifestyle and our diet plays such a huge role on how we feel. And from experience, similar to you, I went vegan. I started as vegetarian, then I went vegan many years ago, and I saw such great benefits, and I just felt so much better. My health was thriving. So I decided to go back to school, actually, because I was originally a journalist. And I decided to learn, why do I feel this good with food? How can I use food as prevention, for disease and to thrive? And how can I help others? So that's what really drove me into becoming a registered dietitian and helping people feel this way through food and lifestyle. So I think more specifically on the plant-based diet, we know there's so many great benefits, but not only for the human health, but also animals and the environment. So I'm very passionate in helping people feel good with the foods they eat.
Yeah, and it certainly shows, Carolina. So thank you for your advocacy and commitment to allowing us to be as healthy as possible and also helping the environment in the process. I love it. 2 thumbs up. Let's dive right into the topic for tonight. Let's talk about being vegetarian, because during COVID, we know there are many individuals that sort of gained the freshman 15 or more, if you will. And then you had some individuals that said, you know what, this is a time to reevaluate my health, and I'm going to give up lots of things. And one of those things are going to be meat, right? And so they gave up meat. But I think what we fail to realize for many people that give up meat, that it's more than just giving up meat and saying, well, now I can eat potato chips and I can eat processed canned foods and I can move on. You're saying there's actually a strategy to do it as healthy as possible. Because full disclosure, I've tried being a vegetarian many years ago myself, going vegan. And what I found is there was a lack of energy many years ago. And I know from speaking with you prior to the broadcast of this program, that's one of the results when people don't always do it in the proper fashion, just giving up meat and not replacing it with other healthy options. Talk to us about why it's so important to do it the right way, and what does it mean to do it the right way so we can still have that energy to push forward and achieve all the wonderful things we need to in this lifetime.
Absolutely. I love that you also speak from experience, and you've witnessed firsthand what it is to transition to a plant-based diet, whether vegan or vegetarian, and not thrive, different than, the experience that I had. So, Shana, this is so important because so many people have the good intention of transitioning to a plant-based diet, but they really don't know where to start, right? So it's exactly what you said. They think about eliminating meat, and that's about it. And we forget that we need to replenish the nutrients that are found in meat, protein and many vitamins and minerals with other foods. Same with dairy, same with eggs. So it is extremely important that you plan your plant-based diet in a very strategic way where you are getting all the food groups in a balanced way, and you're getting all your nutrients. And the best way to do that is by focusing on whole foods, wholesome foods that are minimally processed, right? So think about when you go to the produce aisle of the grocery store, these foods that are not in packages, right? You see bananas and you see bell peppers. Then you go to the middle of the grocery stores and you sell the packaged foods, right? So don't get me wrong, there's a lot of processed foods that are not so detrimental, but what's happening nowadays with really this drive into becoming plant-based is that we have so many more options, right? And that's great because it's helping people transition to plant-based. But as you mentioned too, not everyone's doing the right way because now we have so many processed vegan foods and vegetarian foods. So what's happening is people are really relying on the easy, convenient meat alternatives and snacks and frozen foods that are plant-based but are not necessarily balanced, nutritious, and good for you. So, strategy is, yes, working with a dietitian is a great way to do it, but also educating yourself on how do I get all my nutrients through this diet so that I'm not feeling fatigued and my hair is falling, or, I have digestive problems, so that you can really thrive on it.
Yeah, and that's so key. Thank you, viewers, for watching Let's Talk America Radio's edition of Real Talk. We are on with the one and only registered dietitian based out of Los Angeles, California, Carolina Schneider, and she is really sharing some great information and knowledge. If you have toyed with being a vegetarian or a vegan, she's here to say there is a way to do it, so you don't give up within a week or two, like so many other diet or lifestyle programs that are out there. Carolina, you brought up a valid point of saying when you go in the grocery store, and you're saying one of the things that individuals that are committed to being healthier, and I'm going to venture to say, you would say this just not for a vegan or vegetarian, but people in general, is to try to get as many wholesome foods in their body as possible. And one of the things you mentioned at the top of the segment, you said using food for fuel and what's going into your body and making sure it's proper. But let's address the white elephant in the room. And I know one of the many reasons why people choose processed foods is because lack of time, lack of what they feel they don't have the time to actually commit to a certain lifestyle. So unfortunately, Carolina, you know this, that it's easier to reach for the processed baggage food. It's easier to go through the fast food lines, not knocking it. There can be some healthy options there with fast food, but there's a reason for that, because when you have to help kids with homework, or you're working 2 jobs to try to get by yourself, or you're getting off at 6 p.m. and you've got to get up again the next day early, it's just so much easier to do it as a real person. And that's what I love about your advocacy and your platform. You're a real person, right? You get it. You're busy now. But what tips would you share with us, millions of other real people, that we want to commit to wholesome foods, but unfortunately, when we want to reach for the zucchini, we're saying, but I've got to chop it, and I've got to chop up the onions, and I've got to steam it. And right across the street there, for a really, really cheap price, address the price difference too, is the fast food. And wow, I can get a meal under $5. May not be the healthiest for me, but it will certainly fill me up, and I'll be sleepy within 25 minutes. Help us out.
Absolutely. This is an amazing question, and a very common concern that people have. And I really dedicate my social media platform to helping people incorporate more plants in an easy way. And I am not kidding with you. I really don't love cooking. I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I really, really love these new, nutritious, healthy but convenient food. So let me give you some examples of what I'm referring to that are also happen to be pretty inexpensive. So things like canned beans, right? So many people think, okay, well, I'm going to transition to a plant-based diet. This means I have to eat everything from scratch. Well, no, you don't have to cook everything from scratch. You don't necessarily have to soak your beans and cook them for 8 hours. You can certainly rely on more convenient items that are still healthy. So canned beans and canned chickpeas, for example, yes, some of them have a higher sodium content, but one really easy way to fix that is just by rinsing it with water, and you remove about 40% of the sodium. So that's, something that's inexpensive, it's shelf stable, and it's ready to eat. Another example I love are frozen vegetables. So I agree that having to wash and peel zucchini and take some preparation, some time, and for a busy person, we mentioned moms with kids, there is no time. So frozen vegetables are extremely nutritious. They get a bad rep because they're in the frozen aisle, but they are just as nutritious, if not more, because the freezing process really retains those nutrients. And you can microwave it, you can steam it, and you can make that a really easy addition to your diet. Another thing I love, this is not inexpensive, but nuts and seeds are ready to eat. They are a powerhouse of nutrition. So for a quick snack on the go, if you buy them in bulk, they are a little bit cheaper, but they really give you a lot of bang for your buck because they are full of fiber, they're full of protein, they're full of healthy fats. And then finally, I want to share with you one of my favorite staple items in my pantry, which are microwavable whole grains. So things like brown rice and quinoa that you can buy, those little pouches that you can buy and you put in the microwave for 90 seconds. Those are wonderful. They are so easy. Again, you don't have to make your rice from scratch. If you want to do that, that's wonderful, but you can prep that super quickly. So just a few tips there to help people realize that you can eat healthy in a convenient way.
I love it. Let's talk about a balanced diet though, because as you were talking about wholesome foods and you were talking about even canned beans, but rinsing it off, great tip, something I never thought about. And you talk about frozen foods, love frozen veggies, very quick and easy. And like you say, certainly retains the nutrients. But let's talk about what vegetarians or newly installed vegans are choosing for beverages. And I know because so many times we focus on what goes in our mouth and we're saying, well, I gave up meat. But let's talk about the balance of health when we are reaching for sodas. I don't want to slam sodas completely, but we just want to have a very transparent conversation about our health. If you've given up meat, right, and you're saying, well, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian, but if you're drinking a lot of mini sodas that are out there, I don't need to get into some caffeinated or not caffeinated, how healthy is all of that? And how does that play into I'm being healthy? I gave this part up, but I'm still playing it with the other part. I mean, there has to be a struggle of balance there, I'm assuming. Help me out.
Absolutely. So I am a huge advocate for taking baby steps with anything that you do. And I think the biggest mistake I see with people changing their diet, whatever that looks like, is that they try to do it all at once overnight. And that is the biggest mistake I see, and what really drives people to give up within 2 weeks, like we mentioned earlier. So I am a huge proponent of we want to have balance, right? I believe that by adding more plant-based foods to your diet, you will see great benefits. We see that in scientific research. And I would rather people eat more plants and still perhaps have some not so healthy, not so nutritious foods in their diet than not do that at all, right? So I do think it makes a huge difference to just add more plants. We have studies that show by adding more fruits and vegetables, so more servings per day of fruits and vegetables, you reduce your risk for chronic disease quite significantly without changing anything else in your diet. So yes, changing it all, it's great, but I want people to know that just by making small changes, adding more fruits, more vegetables, more wholesome plant foods that we talked about, you're already doing really great for your body. So when it comes to beverages, yes, we know sodas are not healthy, but listen, if you are changing your whole diet, you're doing so much, you're putting so much effort into eating better, 7 days of the week. If you sometimes have a soda, I believe, if that's going to make you happy and give you that mental health also, I think that's important, right? We don't want to be too extreme to the point that people are unhappy, they're craving things. So that's why I think having that balance is important. But, nowadays, Shana, we want to talk about too, the alternatives to soda, right? So we have all these new drinks that are carbonated, just essentially sparkling water that's flavored with no added sugar. Some are prebiotic, some have some other plant-based ingredients in them. And those are great, those really may fulfill that need. I've had many people I've worked with in the past that really struggle with the soda addiction, is what we call, because it is an addiction. And they found that those beverages really, truly help them kind of wean off of the soda. So I think there's a lot of great alternatives nowadays.
I love it. We're putting the spotlight on a healthy, balanced diet with the one and only LA-based registered dietitian, Carolina Schneider. We're talking about being a vegetarian or a vegan or making just healthy choices. And she just pointed out, even if you can add more plant-based items to your diet, she's saying she'll forgive you if you're still reaching for the soda here and there, because it's certainly about a balanced life. And I love, Carolina, that you are saying it's also part of who you are mentally, emotionally,
Mhm.
physically, because all of that does go together for the balanced view of the person. I want to talk about overeating now, okay? Because so many times people would say, well, I had 2 pieces of steak, I shouldn't have had one. And then they can often feel guilty or bad about it later, saying, I don't think that was the best for me, after they ate it, of course. And let's
Right.
talk about being a vegan or a vegetarian. I know when you talk about plants and fruits or vegetables and fruits, people will often say, hey, have as much as you want. But is that realistic or practical? Because one of the things I will say, I'm someone who takes an interest, not a registered dietitian, and I don't play one on TV, Carolina either. But one of the things I will say, you and I both know, there are several fruits, some of the most popular ones that are very high in sugar. Obviously, it's not chemically processed sugar, but it's still sugar. Can people just eat as many fruits or as many vegetables as they want? Help us out.
Wow, this is great. I love fruits and vegetables, so I can talk about it all day. I do get this question quite often. I think it's a common concern that people have. I will tell you, the sky is the limit. That's a little pushing it. Of course, with anything that we do, there can be consequences. And I'll tell you what exactly. Obviously, fruits and vegetables are extremely nutritious. The natural sugars in fruits don't get processed the same way as refined sugars. So your body does take that in differently because it comes with fiber. So the fiber can help control your blood sugar levels. But of course, if we're talking about someone with diabetes, that's a different story, right? So I'm talking about healthy people who don't have any blood sugar disorders. But what comes with that too, a lot of fruits beyond, the natural sugars, they do have fermentable carbohydrates is what we call them, that they can really, for some people with a gut condition, they can really cause some negative symptoms. So some bloating and discomfort, some people with some IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, who cannot tolerate those types of sugars and carbohydrates, they can have some really negative symptoms. So, for me and for you with no, chronic conditions, we can eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. We probably won't be able to eat 50 bananas because of all the fiber and all the sugars, right? So again, we go back to that balance, but it can be harmful for some people who have those specific conditions. So I will say too, I know you mentioned overeating. When you transition to a plant-based diet, if you're doing it right, eating wholesome foods, it's important to remember that these foods are naturally very low in calories. So you do need to eat more. So if you go out to eat with me, you guys will see that I eat like large quantities, because you do need to up the quantity to meet your calorie needs as well. So that's important to remember.
Right. That is so, so important. And I want to touch on 2 things before we close out. You're saying making sure you're eating enough, because that's a great point. You're talking about lower calories, especially when you're talking about obviously vegetables and fruits. And one of the things I think that's so important, and obviously this is great general health information for more specific needs of your body. We do ask that you speak with your own dietitian who knows your history and knows your current condition. But Carolina, it's always a balance, and we want people, I know you would agree, as the healthcare professional, for people to making sure they're making the right decisions, because for individuals, and there are obviously millions of people out there who have suffered with eating disorders, they want to make sure, of course, that they're still getting a balanced diet, right?
Absolutely. And eating disorders, and this goes back to the mental health aspect that I mentioned earlier, is having that balance is important, because eating disorders are real. They are such a huge issue in the United States that I think needs so much more attention nowadays with social media. I know people's mental health is really affected, and they turn to food to try to achieve a certain body. But I do think that anything that's too extreme can be detrimental for your mental health. So I think mental health is at the top. You need to make sure you are happy, that you're not depriving yourself too much, but you're also taking care of your health with the foods that you're eating. So that's a great point.
Yeah, that happy balance there, like you said, a give or take. Like you mentioned, the example of if you're choosing the right items and you're doing good, a soda here and there for most people who don't have any underlying issues, of course, that may be fine if it gives you some sort of happiness. Absolutely. I said one more thing, but I've got to touch on this. I want to touch on alcohol, in particular wine. I know people that will say, "Oh, wine, it's it's from a fruit, so it's okay." Obviously, it's not straight fruit, obviously, so there's something else being added to it. When it comes to the calories or taking that in, how does that fit into a healthy lifestyle, drinking in particular?
Yeah. So, to touch on the wine, people think, okay, well, it's made of grapes. Grapes have polyphenols, which acts as antioxidants in our body. Yes, pretty might as well eat grapes. But I would tell you, I love wine. I think, alcohol, yes, in moderation, special occasions, like we said, everything about balance. However, it's important to know that alcohol is a huge toxic to our body. So when we intake alcohol, your body is doing everything to get it out immediately. So that affects your digestion. It affects all the ever going mechanisms that your body goes through without you even knowing. So it's not good for us. I mean, we know that anatomically, physiologically speaking, but it goes back to, if you're enjoying a nice dinner with your family, you want to have a glass of wine, yes. Red wine does have some antioxidant capacity, yes. But I do think it goes back to that balance. But we also have to be careful with balance. I think sometimes people take it too lightly. Oh, the dietitian said balance, so I have alcohol 4 times a week and I have 3 drinks a night. So let's remember that we do want to prioritize a wholesome diet, great lifestyle, exercise, good sleep. And, having a drink here or there, 2 to 3 drinks a week, I think it can apply into a healthy diet. But beyond being a toxin, as I mentioned, you mentioned the calories, added sugars, all of that counts. Alcohol in general is very caloric dense. And it usually contains a lot of sugar, depending on what type of alcohol you're having, if you're doing mixers. So no, it's not good for you, but if you're going to have it sometimes to have fun with your friends, then, just be mindful.
And Carolina, and previously in the past, we've had cardiologists that have joined us. And one of the ongoing themes with them is they're saying they have talked about some possible benefits health-wise with red wine, but every one of them said that's not a reason to start red wine. So they're saying by no means do they advocate that, and they're saying you're better off not drinking than certainly without it when it comes to heart disease. I do want to end on diabetes or pre-diabetes, which is so prevalent right now in the United States. As you know, as a registered dietitian, I want to talk about how a vegetarian or vegan diet can impact someone that's a diabetic.
Yes, this is super important to touch on. So we know for a fact from scientific research that a wholesome plant-based diet can be extremely preventative for diabetes and other metabolic conditions. Now, it is true that someone with diabetes has difficulties, and for many, many reasons, digesting, absorbing, and regulating blood sugar, right? And sugar comes from carbohydrates. And as your viewers may know, a plant-based diet relies heavily on carbohydrates because fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. Legumes like beans and lentils are carbohydrates. Whole grains, these are all healthy foods. But for someone with diabetes, we have to remember those carbohydrates can raise their blood sugar. But at the same time, fiber regulates your blood sugar, and plants, this is a fun fact, plants are the only sources of fiber. So you would not find fiber in any other food but plants. So that's why we see such great kind of preventative properties of a plant-based diet with diabetes, because of all that great fiber and all the nutrients. Now, we do want to be careful. Like we talked about the bananas and the fruits that naturally have these natural sugars. People with diabetes have to pay attention to those. So working with your dietitian to get plant-based foods, because we know they're beneficial, but also being able to regulate your carbohydrate intake. And then for pre-diabetes too, I know you mentioned that we do see a lot of research on these plant-based, wholesome plant-based foods, we're talking about real foods,
Yes.
really helping those with prediabetes at preventing it to get to a diabetic stage.
Yeah, so true. And is it fair to say I've heard most people be more concerned with fruits as diabetics than they have been with vegetables? So I'm assuming on a glycemic scale, fruits are more possibly a problem than the vegetables.
Yes, correct. They do contain more carbohydrates and more sugars than vegetables. Vegetables are pretty wonderful for really anyone, but diabetic patients in particular, because like we said, they are low in sugar, they're really high in fiber.
I love it. More reasons to eat your greens for all the kids and adults listening.
Yes.
What great information. Before you leave us, really quick, can you give us a few fruits that may be low in carbs or lower than the average one? I know you mentioned bananas. I've always heard bananas are not the best when it comes to carbs or the glycemic scale. And they have such great other benefits. And like you said, it's all in moderation, and know your underlying health conditions before you choose, as you work with a registered dietitian who certainly can help. But any other fruits to avoid, or give us some ideal list of ones that may be low in carbohydrates?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the top fruits that you can eat for all of us and those with a pre-diabetic stage are berries. So berries are wonderful, not only because they are super high in antioxidants and other great properties, but they happen to be lower in sugar naturally. Also, any fruits that have water. So think about watermelon, and that's a very controversial one because people think of watermelon and cantaloupe and melons as really high sugars because they're so sweet, but they have a really high content of water. So that really balances out, right? Because you're getting a lot of water per serving. So that kind of like dilutes the sugar. And then citrus fruits too. So think about grapefruit. That's a wonderful fruit to eat. The fruits that are a little bit more acidic and, great benefits overall, but also especially great for those with diabetes.
Nice. And that would include oranges as well?
So yeah, so oranges are pretty great. The problem with oranges is when we make them into an orange juice, right? So any fruit juice, that's the one thing I really never recommend because what happens when we make a juice, we remove all the fiber. And like we said earlier, the fiber is really what regulates the blood sugar, when you're intaking those natural sugars from fruit. So avoiding fruit juices is important. If you're making a smoothie, make sure you add a lot of leafy greens in there. So, a lot of people come to me, they're like, well, I had this fruit smoothie, I'm so healthy. And it's great that you're having fruits, but when you blend the fruits, those sugars are loose and we absorb them a lot quicker. So adding things like spinach or kale or adding some protein will help balance out those sugars in a smoothie.
I love it. Just for me, it's another reason to eat more veggies. Not hating on fruits any, but it certainly seems like the vegetables is something we should be more interested in choosing more and more of. I love it. I certainly love it. Before you go, so many great questions asked, such a great advocate and guest. Our parents told us many years ago, for some of us, and for some, maybe it was just a few years ago, to eat your vegetables. There are all sorts of things in it that can help even fight diseases, even cancer. Was that a myth or is it true?
No, it is true. Many compounds in different fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, that have been seen to have anti-cancer properties. So when we tested, researchers tested in a lab, and there's some human studies as well. It can help prevent tumors from growing and proliferating. And in particular, I have here to show you, Shana, today I have garlic, and I love garlic as a seasoning and to season foods, but this in particular garlic has great anti-inflammatory properties and anti-cancer properties, as we've seen in research. Other ones are cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, all of those have been well studied and help prevent disease.
Nice. I love it. And I love cabbage. One of my favorites.
Yes,
So
I love it.
eat those vegetables. Don't go and
You
eat
go.
Carolina Schneider, what a pleasure to have you on. Registered dietitian out of Los Angeles, California. We were so inspired and motivated and educated by this conversation. We're going to have you back on probably near the holiday period to give us a reminder of some of the packaged dessert sweets that we often love to eat. But so we cannot be thrown off of our healthy lifestyle because this as a registered dietitian, it sure is easy to put on the pounds, but it's much more difficult to take it off.
Absolutely. Yes. But I love the work that you're doing and educating people and raising awareness on health.
You, my pleasure. Now, where can our national and international viewers go for additional information about everything you talked about tonight?
Yes, well, I would love to connect with your viewers here. I am on Instagram as Carolina the Green RD as in registered dietitian. I also, Shana, wanted to share with you before we go that I just published an article on my blog. I have a website. It's called Hungry for Plants. So that's easy. I'm always hungry for plants. And I just wrote a blog about going vegan or transitioning to a plant-based diet and what supplements you should pay attention to. So what specific nutrients and this is a conversation for another day. We can have a whole conversation on this. I think it's so important to really highlight those supplements that need to be a part of your diet if you are transitioning to a plant-based diet. So they can read more about that over there.
Yeah, great information. And give them the website.
It's hungryforplants.com.
I love it. Hungryforplants.com. Clever and innovative, just like you, Carolina. What a pleasure to have you here on Let's Talk America Radio. We'll have you back on. Thank you for all of the information. Viewers, as you can see, you'll continue to be educated and inspired from our exclusive guests. They're the best and the brightest in their fields, and you deserve great information that will educate you again. For more specific information on any underlying health condition you have, please seek your own specific registered dietitian. Of course, we're so excited to have Ms. Schneider on tonight on Real Talk. And of course, that was general information bringing awareness to you. Stay tuned in to Let's Talk America Radio. Visit ltaradio.com for additional information. Again, that's ltaradio.com, or simply follow us on your favorite social media outlet. You're on the gram, you're on the famous Facebook or Twitter. You can find us, of course, simply search Let's Talk America Radio or LTA Radio. Our hashtag is LTA Radio as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week. We'll be back on soon with another exclusive interview. In the meanwhile, take this great information from this exclusive guest, our registered dietitian, and keep sharing it. Okay? Thanks for watching. Thanks, Carolina. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care, everyone.